Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of the Senstennial podcast. Tonight, we got some topics lined up because the lineup has been scrambling. Everything's a mix-up because of COVID, and yeah, so we're going to basically be delving into a lot of lineup talk tonight, and we're going to start it off from the top with Eric Brandstrom finally being recalled from the Belleville Senators. So we don't really need to put much more preamble before that. Everyone, for the most part, wants Brandstrom up in Ottawa, playing in the NHL lineup. So I'll toss it over to Bennett first. Bennett, what do you think about Brandstrom being called up?
Yeah, I mean, long overdue is the short answer. The defensive core in this team so far this season has been a story of, one great pairing and two just complete black hole pairings. And as we discussed, at length in a recent episode. Brandstrom can only help. It can only go up from, Josh Brown and his even strength Corsi of 38.3%, which is not a good number. I'm not a statistician, nor am I necessarily like a big advanced stats guy, but I do know numbers, and I do know which numbers are low and which numbers are high, and that number is low. And shout out to the fan that was seated a few rows back from us. We were at the game on Thursday, who was just absolutely taunting Josh Brown every time he stepped on the ice. He's like, "You made a pass, good job, number 3." which was pretty mean, but it shows kind of like the frustration that a lot of people have with this player right now. Zaitsev was dropped for at least one game this past week. And so defense has been rough. And Brandstrom was pretty good last year defensively. He was certainly not a black hole by any means. And so it can only be an improvement to have him in the lineup, even if they only had to do it for COVID reasons, which we are going to touch on in a minute. Hopefully he gets a few good looks as a result. DJ said something to the effect of, he can show us like the player that we all think that he is, kind of thing. Which like sounded positive, but could also be taken like kind of negatively, depending on like how you feel about Smith and his relationship with Brandstrom and everything.
Yeah.
But hope he gets a few good looks and hope he can stick around.
I just hope he gets to play on the second power play unit as the quarterback.
Yeah.
Because honestly,
that'd be huge.
In the preseason, like he looked pretty solid there. And I think there were some times where he was a little unsure of what to do with the puck. But overall, I think, that's just a young defenseman trying to find his footing in the NHL as playing important minutes, because usually guys like that, it takes them a little while to get into a role like that. But other man, I know you really like Brandstrom. So what do you think about him finally being called up here?
I'm really happy with the call up. I definitely thought it would have been, a couple weeks ago, but it's unfortunate, especially considering that as I've said, right from the start of the season, I thought that Holden Brandstrom pairing would have been a lock to be our second pair going into this season. And unfortunately, it's going to be Brandstrom Zub, because Zaitsev has now supplanted Zub on the top pairing. Not by any wrongdoing by Zub. It's just every other defenseman is goddamn terrible, and they need to spread out the two NHL defensemen they have. Brandstrom should hopefully come in and play on that second pairing with Zub. And if that is the case, then they had some really excellent success last year at the end of the season. And I think that should be enough to get Brandstrom a full-time position in this lineup. They've played 10 games now, and Zub came in last year at about the 8-game point mark, or the 8-game mark. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to see Brandstrom come in, have a good game, and kind of fit in, and it pushes out one of Mete, Michael Del Zotto, and Josh Brown.
It's worth mentioning too that Well, it took a similar number of games compared to last year for us to put in Zub versus this year. We're giving Brandstrom a shot. We're actually like proportionally like much earlier in the season than we were last year. Like last year, 10 games was like a fifth of the way through. This year, it's like an eighth of the way
right.
through.
You're absolutely right. And so, I mean, if Holden comes back and Brandstrom's already been playing well with Zub, I would not be surprised if Smith was like, well, if he's playing well with Zub, we can go back and try the Holden pairing again. Or maybe Chabot gets to play with Holden, because Zaitsev cannot be the long-term option up on that top pairing. As we all know, he's the best way I could put it, dog shit. So yeah.
He's a lot of people were saying that his game against Tampa Bay was all right. Like he wasn't the one bringing the team down, which I guess is a positive when he's had some pretty big gaffes going on earlier in the season.
Yeah.
For me, I think that Brandstrom, I just really hope that he has at least a good showing, even if he doesn't get any points on the board. If he has a good showing, then I think that helps just give him a chance to get in the line at the next game. Like, I think it's hard. I think if he struggles, then it just gives DJ Smith to pull him out. And, you know, if Josh Brown's the one coming out, you put Josh Brown back in. It's just, what I don't understand is, you know what you have in Josh Brown. You know what he is at this stage of his career. You don't know what you have in Brandstrom yet. And it's not like this year you're trying to contend to win the cup. So I don't know why they wouldn't just put him in the lineup. He's going to make mistakes. You're coaching him in the NHL. I know that Troy Mann is a really good coach, but giving him the NHL coaching, being around the team, the core is very young. He's going to be one of those pieces that grows with the team. Like if you look at the future outlook of this team and let's just go with the Sens philosophy of only wanting one small guy on the back end. Would you not want Brandstrom, who has really high upside, versus Mete, who's played about 150, 200 games in the NHL? And you kind of know where Mete is. Like he's a player who this season hasn't shown as much, but is kind of like a good transition player, but doesn't really give you like one strong, I don't know, either offense or defense. He doesn't have like one strong trait. It's just, he kind of exists. I think Brandstrom could really carve his way into a role on this team. And yeah, I think that's really all I can say on that. I just hope that he stays for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I think, how many times have we had the same conversation about defense? It's always going to sort of end up the same way. We obviously want Brandstrom in the lineup. Ideally, it like at the end of the day, it turns out to be, Chabot, Zub, Brandstrom, Holden, and then whatever that goddamn bottom pairing is.
Mete Delzato or something.
Yeah.
At this point, Delzato's not the worst option down there.
No, he's not.
But all right, well, let's move on. Let's look at the goalies. So Murray hasn't been exactly lighting it on fire, but I will give some leeway to him. I know some people are like, "Oh my God, how can you give leeway to Matt Murray?" Well, I think that there's a couple goals that were scored against him where guys just completely screened him out, Josh Brown, or he just, I don't know, didn't have a chance on the play or whatever. You are playing Tampa Bay. Forsberg he started off really good and then has looked shaky ever since. Gus gets sent down. So Gus was the one who is holding the fort. He looked the best out of all three goalies. I won't deny that.
Has the most wins.
Great. Yep. No, he's looked good in net. There's really not much more to say. You can tell that he is on a good trajectory, even though he's allowed a lot of goals. I won't put the blame solely on him. Just like I said with Matt Murray, I think that there's just a lot of high quality chances that our team gives up, and sadly Gustafsson can't save them all. So but he gets sent down, and I know a lot of people aren't too happy with that. I personally just think that the Sens didn't want to ride three goalies on the NHL lineup, and so he's the odd man out because he's not waiver eligible. So other than that, I'll kick it off with you this time. And yeah, what do you think about Gus going down?
I think it's kind of dumb. If I'm being completely honest, I would probably say that they should investigate moving on from Forsberg, whether it's waivers or trading him to a different organization. Like I feel for the guy, but the only way he was sticking around is if he plays lights out, and I don't really know that he has. Well, his stats would suggest he has not. But Gustafsson, as you said, he's allowed a lot of goals, but he's still rocking an above 910 save percentage, which is pretty damn good. So I think it's safe to say, like, everybody can be wrong, but I think we have an NHL goaltender right there, and we very well could have a starter in Philip Gustafsson. I don't know about you guys, but it reminds me of the Hamburglar run, what not to judge on. And Hamburglar was a reactionary goalie. He was all over the place. And the difference with Gustafsson, he's calm and collected and technically sound. Whereas, and I feel calm when he's in net. Like, I don't worry that we're going to get scored on. Whereas, like, with guys like with Hammond, for example, who looked really good for that short amount of time, I was always like waiting for the bubble to explode. And even going into that playoff series with the Habs, I wanted Andy to start because that's the guy, that's our starter. And they went with him. It is what it is. But I think Gustafsson has shown me in however many games he's played that he is very much a technically sound and ready and capable goalie. So his talents are just going to be wasted in the AHL. And he should be here. He's proven himself to be the guy. He's outplayed Matt Murray so far. He's outplayed Anton Forsberg, and he's the one going down. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think the key here is like you said, Matt, off the top. It's Forsberg and it's waivers, and it's who can you? They don't want to have three goalies and have at any given point two of them sitting on their ass. So they want to run with just two goalies, and for Gustafsson, it's the path of least resistance to send him down. I think that we will move on from Forsberg this season. I think it'll be sooner rather than later. He's 29 years old, and he has the worst stats of the three goalies that have played so far. He has an 85 save percentage and a 4.8 goals against. His quality starts is 1 out of 3, so that's no good. He's not really, we're not trying to develop him or anything. It's not something we care about whether he plays through it or not. Like, we know he doesn't have a future with his team. Right now he's just taking up a roster spot. I don't necessarily hate that we signed him at the start of the year just to have a body around just in case. But, Gustafsson has looked good. We've got other goalies in the system still. I think it's time to move on from him. I don't hate sending Gustafsson down for a few weeks, a month or two even. If it means that, Forsberg will be gone later this year, and then he'll be starting a game a week. And then in that case, like, I don't mind if he gets some AHL time in the interim. But Forsberg, I think it is time to cut bait on that one.
Cool. Well, let's go on to something that was released today, or at least in greater detail, and it's Ottawa's COVID protocol list. So initially it was announced that Austin Watson was on the list. Was it Nick Holden first? It was Watson.
It was Watson first.
Okay, it was Watson first. Then Holden got announced, and now we have 3 more: assistant coach Jack Capuano, Connor Brown, and Dylan Gambrell. And obviously, of the list we just said, Connor Brown's the biggest hit for sure. I know he hasn't had as good of a start to his season as he played last year, but he's one of those guys who he plays your penalty kill. He plays your second unit power play, which, despite it not being great, it's even worse without Connor Brown there. He plays good 5-on-5 minutes. It's hard to replace a guy like that. And in fact, I just don't think you can. So, with those guys out of the lineup, Ben, how do you think the Sens are going to be looking up against the Boston Bruins tomorrow?
Yeah, we've got, in terms of next games in the docket, we're playing at Boston tomorrow. And then Thursday, we're hosting the Kings. And then Saturday, it looks like we're hosting the Penguins. So not necessarily easy games. The Kings could be a slightly easier game, but really, I think realistically, they're at our level. It's not like we're really punching down on that one. We're punching laterally at best. So I think those are some tough fixtures, especially missing, guys like Holden, Brown, even Watson. We're all reasonably solid, dependable guys. And Holden started off the season pretty well. Has fallen off like a bit, but he's certainly not our worst defender. Connor Brown has been pretty consistently offensively useful. He's got like 7 points in 11 games, which isn't, great, but it's not terrible. Although he's a -7. So, but I mean, this whole team's minus is rough. And I don't think it's necessarily the forward's fault on that one. But anyway, it'll be tough without those guys. It can give us the opportunity to give some other guys some looks. I think Sokolov is coming up to play in place of Brown. So that's kind of cool. It'd be nice to see him get an NHL start. Maybe you can pot one and you can, go down with a smile once Brown returns, and he can have some positive juju for him within the organization. It's always good.
Yeah, Connor Brown did have a really good game last game, and hopefully that puts him into form. And Nick Holden has been in and out of the lineup the last couple of games. Gambrel, they just got, I think he's a replacement level player. Yeah, he's a replacement level player. And you did touch on the power play too, and I think there's it's not particularly good, but it can be better, and that's what's really frustrating to me. I think there's Nick Paul's probably the center there, which makes sense. Connor Brown, I would probably have Formenton on the wing. I would have Ennis playing on that, and then if you have Brandstrom, that's a pretty solid second power play. It's not beating it's not a world beater, but it's considerably better than what we have out there now. But going back to the call ups, I think it's really cool that Brandstrom and Sokolov will hopefully have a chance to play. Sabourin getting called up. It kind of sucks for guys that have been putting in the work down there. I know Mark Kastelik has kind of been having a relatively quiet but effective last 6 or 7 games. And so he should have been deserving of a call up, especially considering he plays center. Whereas, Sabourin, he went from, our 4th line to being sent down, and then is playing the 3rd line in Belleville. So this is your opportunity to give chances to young players.
I think it's more so that they'd rather those guys develop with Troy Mann, and Sabourin's not going anywhere with the organization. I don't think there's aspirations for him to be a long-term depth player on the team. So I think it's literally just to have a guy filling the press box, and you're not doing your young guys any favors if they're just sitting in the press box. So,
but I don't necessarily think, if they do call up Scott Sabourin, that he's not going to play.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm not sure. Maybe they just want to keep the guys down there with Troy Mann. I really don't know.
Yeah,
but, we should be calling up Lucchini if you ask me.
Yeah, apparently he's been on fire too. Good for him.
He has 6 goals or something. But Sokolov, he's got 6 points in 9 games down there. And yeah, I'm actually pretty interested to see. I think they'll give him second power play minutes. And I'm really interested to see how he does, because he's a very good catch and release shooter. And if he's in the right spot and he gets that puck on his stick, he is going to just wire it. So I'd love to see him play on that unit.
And I suspect he could be playing on that second line as well.
Yeah. So I'll get into the lines eventually. Damn it, Matt.
Well, you can do that now, right?
Yeah, I guess it is our show. Okay, so we're gonna just go with the Locked On Sens podcast predicted lineup for tomorrow. So they had Kachuk, Norris Batherson, which makes sense. Stützle, Tierney, Sokolov, Formanton, Paul Ennis, Kelly, Shaw, Sabrin, and then on defense they had Chabot, Zaitsev, Brandstrom, Zub, Delzato, and Josh Brown, and then starting goalie Matt Murray. So yeah, if Sokolov's playing on that second unit with Stützle and Tierney, it'll be interesting to see how he does. That's like a pretty high role to throw that guy into for his first game. But hey, I'm all for it. I want to see what Sokolov has to offer in a top 6 role.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. You want a trigger man with Stützle, who is an amazing passer and gets it to wherever he needs it to go. Sokolov is a pure finisher. So knowing that, I think it's a really good opportunity. I'm still on the Tierney's just been really lucky train. I really don't think he should be playing with the caliber player that is Stützle. But, it is what it is. It's annoying, but we are severely lacking in center depth, and that's really costing us. But I do really like those lines. I think you have 2 pretty solid D pairings. And yes, I am including the Chabot Zaitsev one because I think they make themselves like
they come out even.
Exactly.
It's like a really great defender and a really bad defender come out to like an average pair.
Exactly. And then, whatever they do with that bottom pair, we're playing Boston. They're a good team. So we're in tight,
Well, let's kind of go talk about both Tim Stützle and Thomas Chabot. So let's talk about Stützle first. Prior to this game, he was playing on the third line for like a few games in a row. And I don't know what that's about, but he cannot be playing on the third line. So I don't know if you guys want to chime in anything about that, but that kind of just shook me. Like, this is a dude who you want leading your team for the next, 15 years? Well, maybe not that long in terms of a top echelon goal scorer or point getter, but he's the kind of guy who you are going to have in your top 6, top 3 for the next 10 years. So why are we putting him on the third line with players who are really not offensively inclined?
Yeah. And I'll preface this by saying this is something I've always wondered, and maybe I don't know if like there's this sensible hockey explanation for this phenomenon. I mean, I'm not like a hockey guy in the sense of I didn't play the sport growing up or I haven't coached it or anything, but it seems like when a forward is struggling to start the year, and then in order to like help them in quotations, they demote them to like a worse line with like less talented line mates. It's like we'd see it happen all the time with Mike Hoffman. And it's like I know that like Mike Hoffman, like there's probably some underlying issues there, considering he like can't stick around a team for more than like a season despite being like a good goal scorer. So it's like good goal scorers don't grow on trees. There's probably a reason why every team moves on from him after a year. But I mean, like he played here for years and was usually reasonably effective. But it's like every coach would do this thing where it's like at a certain point they'd have him playing on like the third line for half a season. And it didn't make any friggin' sense because how was that supposed to help them work through anything by like giving them less ice time, worse line mates and everything. Yeah. So it doesn't really make any sense to me why Stützle is on the third line. I think Stützle should be stapled to the first line.
Yeah.
I think the first line should be Stützle, Norris, Batherson.
I agree.
I think Chuck's game is better suited
to
a second line role where he can play with like our next best center and a good winger who he can help use his physicality to create some space, create some chaos. The first line doesn't need chaos. The first line needs finesse.
Yeah.
Tkachuk slows that line down more often than not. We want Stützle there. He's slick enough. He's skilled enough to keep up with Norris and Batherson and tee them up. And that's what we should be doing. And he's going to pass Tkachuk on that left-hand side sooner rather than later, long term. So I don't see what we gain by keeping him in the second or third line when we know what his ceiling is.
And to that point, Ben, I mean, you hit all the nails on the head. But it's definitely frustrating when you see Stützle is one of the only players that actually has consequences to his game. Situationally, he'll have a bad shift, or like he lollygags getting to the bench or something like that, and then he's suddenly on the fourth line. But then you'll see passive play from Zach Sanford. He doesn't get benched. You'll see terrible defensive zone coverage from Josh Brown, Victor Mete, Nikita Zaitsev. That goes unpunished. But then once you suddenly have a 19-year-old who makes a mistake or two in one game, or a couple mistakes in one game, I'm sorry, he's a teenager who is probably the best player on that team when he's on the ice. Like when he is on his game, he's the best player. Like his ceiling is much higher than Chabot's and is way higher than Tkachuk's. And if he's on his game, you're going to win. But how many times are you going to be able to actually do that when you're playing in a third or fourth line role? His game is not set up for that. And you're pitting him to fail if that's the situation you're going to be putting him in. And I've seen it for 3 or 4 games now that he has to play with Chris Tierney and some bum on the right wing. And to be perfectly honest, DJ Smith needs to get his fucking head out of his ass before he ruins this teenager. And yeah, is it early to say that? Sure. But frankly, if he doesn't play on the second line or higher, you're wasting his talent.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like we can quibble about first or second line. It's like Matt and I both think he should be on the first line. He's certainly going to be in the first line long term. So, but he should be at least on the second line. Like, and I get that, the lineup's a bit of a shambles right now anyway. Pinto's been out for a while. Our center depth, as you previously stated, is, hot garbage at the moment. We've got, close to half a dozen players missing through COVID. It's like things are all over the place right now. So like I can accept some hooey lineups in the next few games, like because needs must, but he cannot be on the third line in a month or 2 months. Like then it's just like absurd. Then it's like, well, if you're going to have him on the third line, put him down in Belleville where he can score like 60 points in 10 games and then bring him back up and stick him on the first line where he belongs.
Yeah, honestly, I've seen people suggest that they send him to Belleville to get his confidence back, and I honestly totally disagree. Like, if you send this guy,
I don't think that's
dumb as
what
hell.
We should do. But it's like if you're gonna keep him on the third line, it's like, well, then what's the point?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think a guy like that, he's obviously. I would have argued maybe a week or two ago that he was not. I shouldn't say not frustrated, but he was still confident. But I think now his confidence may have taken a bit of a hit, especially with, like other Matt was saying, like having him being benched, even though other guys who play like crap or aren't doing anything are continuing to get shifts. It's definitely giving me at least pause for concern. Like, this guy shouldn't be like getting sat. He shouldn't be playing third line minutes. He should be, like you said, I would love to see him with Norris and Batherson. Before Tkachuk signed, that's what the line was. And they looked pretty solid together. So, and I don't think that Tkachuk is a bad player. I know Ben and I have gotten in our spats in our own Senstennial chat about Brady Tkachuk, and I think he's a great player, but his skating is his detriment, and I think Stützle excels with his skating. And when you have a guy like Stützle who could play with Norris and Batherson, that would be one hell of a first line going forward. And that's no knock on Tkachuk, but like we've already talked about, Stützle has a high ceiling, and he has some beautiful skill that he can put on display. And if you put him with Norris and Batherson, where when he's against defenders on the ice, they have to defend 3 guys, not just him, that gives him a lot more opportunity. Playing him on the third line, guys are like, oh, who am I going to cover? Tyler Ennis or Tim Stützle? Any competent defender is going to be like, I think I'm going to cover Tim Stützle, the guy who can dangle around like three people like pylons. Like, you're going to have more focus on him. You're going to have be more aggressive on him. So anyway, I could ramble on about that, but I think I'm totally in agreement that he needs to be playing with good players where he can be a threat and have that scoring threat alongside him, so that it opens up his space to get more shots on net.
This goes back to the whole, not trading for a top 6 center in the offseason and relying on another rookie to be playing that. So,
yeah. Your best players thrive when they play with your other best players. And I remember this debate coming up all the time in the season following the 2017 conference final run, the season when everything went off the rails. And it's like I think it was shortly after we, by Christmas, like things were clearly in, the gutter that season. But I remember it's like all of those guys were getting moved all around the lineup. We had Brassard, Duchesne, like Hoffman, Stone. It's like Boucher was moving them all around the lineup and stuff. And it was like, they played best together. When it's like you took all of your top 6 forwards and, put them in your top 6, then you had 2 good lines and then they were good and they created points and offense and stuff. And it's like, it's really not rocket science. And I hate it when NHL coaches do this. And it seems like so many of them do it, at least here in Ottawa. It's like they feel the need to like break up their best players and stick them on lines where they don't belong. And it's really frustrating at times. And I hope that it's not a long-term thing with Stützle, that it's a reflection of the lineup being in flux rather than, DJ's actual estimation of him, which I'm going to, be positive here and say that I think it is. Like, I think DJ obviously rates Stützle. I mean, he raved about him last season. When we've had, a full lineup, he's stuck him, in the top 6 at a minimum. And so I think he realizes that he's probably just trying to spread some skill throughout the lineup, given how bad our depth is right now. I don't agree with that, like, course of action, but it's at least like an understand, like, if like that is what he's doing, then I understand that more than if he's just punishing Stützle for some unknown reason.
Yeah, and there's another player that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Thomas Chabot a bit, but before I get into that, I just want to say for everyone listening, we're also on YouTube now at the Senstennial podcast. All of our episodes are uploaded there. Our lovely producer Timon does the thumbnail art for those, and they're great. So please drop us a sub over on YouTube, and we'll do guest live streams. There's already a few on there that you can check out. And other than that, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Discord. You can find us basically everywhere at Senstennial Podcast. And anyway, let's move on to talking about Thomas Chabot's production. So I believe it was Sean Simpson, and people are going to be rolling their eyes already, like, Sean Simpson does it again. Yes, just as Sean Simpson starts to get on the Brandstrom train, he immediately turns around and says, "What's up with Chabot's production?" Now, I think Chabot has looked very good this season, and I think the production for him is not so much how he's played, but just points maybe not being scored, like, after he creates a play. Like, I don't really know if you could fault him, but I'll jump over to you, other Matt, and you can kind of tell me what you feel about that.
I would be legitimately interested to seeing like how many if there was a statistic that showed how many plays a player starts that lead to goals. I don't know if that's an analytic stat or not. I think it would be very cool if it was, because I could probably guarantee that a lot of offense is started off of Chabot's stick. He's just not lucking out and getting a secondary or primary assist or even a goal. That power play has a lot of shooters. You're going to have Tkachuk shooting, you're going to have Stützle shooting, you're going to have Norris shooting. Hell, and Batherson shooting. There are like a lot of shooters on that. So Chabot's going to be facilitating that puck a lot of the time. I don't think it's anything to worry about. Should his production like hinder his ability to make Team Canada? I also disagree. I think Chabot has been one of the best Canadian defenders this year, especially playing with a competent defender in Zub. And you see flashes of brilliance whenever Chabot moves the puck. I mean, there was one. I want to say it was against San Jose that Chabot had a pretty amazing rush up, and it was just a really nice save.
There's this other play on Thursday against Vegas. I don't know if you caught this, Matt, from where you were, but he did a no-look backhand pass and put it on the tape of somebody streaking into the Vegas zone. I can't for the life of me remember who had the puck. It wasn't like someone who you would necessarily expect to score in that situation.
Yeah.
But, it was a crazy seeing eye pass, on the backhand and just perfectly put through one of our guys. Like, he is playing so well and he's getting excellent looks. He only has 3 points in 11 games, but miraculously for a team that's been this bad defensively, he's a +3, and it shows you how much.
And that's
how
a +3. That's a +3 after being like a -4 in the last 4 games. So he built himself up like quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I know on this show we never are huge at a +-, but when you have a discrepancy of some defensemen who are at like -7 and then Thomas Chabot who's at +3, that should tell you something.
The thing. Like +-, it's a sledgehammer and not a scalpel, right? Like it tells you something. It's not like it's not a miracle stat, but in broad strokes, it can tell you vaguely, how a person is doing defensively.
Yeah, and I just want to throw a few advanced analytics out here, courtesy of Hockey Reference. He's rocking a career high Corsi for of 56.7. The goaltender save percentage when he's on the ice is .931. So when he's on the ice, our goalie's save percentage is significantly above league average. And also, like, looking at his expected goals for, it's the highest of his career. It's at 5.7. That's pretty wild. That's like when he's on the ice, it's expected that you're going to score about 6 more goals than your opposition. The second highest in his career was 1.3. So like he is coming into his own. He's in another league, especially on this team anyway. And
elite.
Yes, you can even say elite. Yeah, and his production isn't showing right now, but man, come back after 40 games and let's see what his production's at. On that note, I think we can call it a wrap here. What do you boys think?
Regards.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You both just gave me thumbs up, no words. Our listeners are like, empty silence. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening. Really appreciate it. Sens are in Boston tomorrow. Let's get a win against these brutal Bruins that nobody likes. And let's bring it on home after. I think they're home after that, right? Against the Kings.
Yeah, we've got
so
a few home
let's bring it on. Bring it on back home and get the dub there.
Go Sens, go.
Yeah, cool. Hope we can get something out of these next few games and see some good looks from the young guys coming up. Go Sens, go.
Go Sens, go, baby.